All right, guys, so Israel has now lost even Piers Morgan, who has spent the last 19 months of the genocide in Gaza being one of their staunchest allies and defenders in the media. So just yesterday, he was on his own show, Piers Morgan Uncensored, with Mehdi Hasan, and he basically admitted that he was wrong and even used the word genocidal to describe what Israel is doing right now. So we're going to watch this clip, and then I also have a clip afterwards, once I give you my thoughts on this, with Mehdi Hasan battling it out with this guy over here, John Spencer, who is still drinking the Kool-Aid on this issue, if you will. So let's go ahead and jump into this first clip.
You and I have talked about this war in Gaza for ever since it started, this phase of the 75-year conflict. And I have resisted going as far as you have done in your criticism of the Israeli government. I resist no more. I think we've reached common ground about what we view is happening and has been happening through this period of this blockade, which frankly is just starvation of the people there, including so many innocent young women and children. And I think that the incessant bombing and killing, and we don't know how many civilians have been killed, but it is on a daily basis. It looks like hundreds of people every day, with no apparent attempt, it seems to me, to have any real plan for how this ends or what happens when it ends, other than if you look at what Smodrich has been saying, probably the most right-wing member of a very right-wing government, he is talking in a genocidal language about kicking all the Palestinians out. So I think you and I have reached a place in the last few weeks where we are in agreement. But my question for you, Mehdi, is how does this end?
I don't know the answer to that question, Piers, and I'm glad we're in agreement. I wish we weren't. Actually, I wish I had been wrong and you were right. I wish that a year ago when I said on your show, you said, well, if it's not about the hostages, what's it about? And I said, it's about depopulating Gaza. It's about conquering Gaza. I wish I'd been wrong. But as you said, Bezalel Smotrich, the finance minister in the Israeli government, said this week, we are there to conquer, cleanse, and remain. Those are his words. We are disassembling Gaza, he said. We are leaving it as piles of rubble. He says, we're doing something that no one's done in the world before. He bragged out loud, and he said, yes, the Gazans will have to leave. So all of those things are stuff some of us were saying last year. I wish we hadn't been vindicated in this horrific way. The killing is ongoing. The starvation is ongoing. And look, I do hope that a dam is bursting. You mentioned the genocide word. Shmuel Lederman, who is an Israeli researcher of genocide, spent much of 2024 saying it's not a genocide, it's not a genocide. He was interviewed by a Dutch newspaper last week. He said, I've changed my position. It is a genocide. He said, in my field, there's a consensus among genocide scholars that it's a genocide. In fact, that Dutch newspaper interviewed 7 leading scholars of genocide. Every single one said, we think what's happening in Gaza is a genocide. In fact, this week, Piers, you have an Israeli former general, Yair Golan, saying a sane country does not attack civilians, does not kill babies as a hobby, and does not expel civilian populations.
So on the one hand, right, I'm glad that Piers has finally come around on this, and it does give you an insight into how extreme and how violent Israel has been, that even somebody like Piers Morgan is now using the word genocidal to describe their intentions. So on the other hand, it's 19 months into this, Piers. It's 19 months into this, and it does come across as somebody kind of putting their finger up into the wind and seeing the direction in which things are going right now and changing their position. Because the main thing that Mehdi just said there that stuck out to me is that he wishes that he was wrong, right? When a year ago, he told people like Piers that Israel's goal in Gaza is depopulation, right? This is what we've been saying from the beginning, that the goal is to make life in Gaza impossible, that they are indiscriminately targeting civilians, that they are restricting aid from getting into Gaza. None of the things that Piers is alluding to there that he now disagrees with are new things. These are things that have been done since the beginning of this genocide. And it's not as if Piers can feign ignorance on this, because he's been talking to people like Mehdi Hasan and many other critics of Israel for the entirety of this genocide. So he's been exposed to all of the various war crimes. He's been exposed to that side of the equation, and he chose to stand in defense of Israel. So I don't know how much credit you can possibly give to somebody now, 19 months into a genocide, as Israel is approaching their final solution now and is just being much more open about their end goal being mass ethnic cleansing or mass death, I just don't know how much credit you can possibly give to somebody like Piers Morgan. But I guess he's finally come around at this point. Now, to remind you guys, because I think this is important, again, to hammer in the point that I'm getting to there, I want to remind you guys of the International Court of Justice filing from South Africa that we covered closer towards the beginning of this genocide. I believe it was like late 2023 that this was initially filed. And even then, we had all of these different quotes from top Israeli officials. Here's the section of this genocide case filing from South Africa. It's section D here, expressions of genocidal intent against the Palestinian people by Israeli state officials and others. So if we just read some of these, just in what Israeli officials were saying in the immediate aftermath of October 7th, to show that it's not as if any of this was a secret, right? It's not as if it was difficult for somebody like Piers Morgan to figure out what Israel was planning to do from the beginning. So just a couple of these real quick. On October 16th, 2023, in a formal address to the Israeli Knesset, Benjamin Netanyahu described the situation as a struggle between the children of light and the children of darkness, between humanity and the law of the jungle, a dehumanizing theme to which he returned to on various occasions, including on the 3rd of November of the same year in a letter to Israeli soldiers and officers, which was also posted on Twitter. The letter asserted that this is a war between the sons of light and the sons of darkness. We will not let up on our mission until the light overcomes the darkness. The good will defeat the extreme evil that threatens us and the entire world. He then returned to this theme in his Christmas message, saying, "We're facing monsters who murdered children in front of their parents. This is a battle of Israel against the barbarians. It is a battle of civilization against barbarism." And then here was one of the main quotes that people remember. He invoked the biblical story of the total destruction of Amalek by the Israelites, stating, "You must remember what Amalek has done to you, says our Holy Bible, and we do remember." The prime minister referred again to Amalek in a letter that was sent on the 3rd of November to Israeli soldiers and officers. And of course, the relevant biblical passage reads as follows, quote, "Now go, attack Amalek and proscribe all that belongs to him. Spare no one, but kill alike men and women, infants and sucklings, oxen and sheep, camels and asses." So this is just one of the many quotes that we had. We also had the president of Israel, Isaac Herzog, at the time saying it's an entire nation out there that is responsible. It's not true. This rhetoric about civilians not aware and not involved, it's absolutely not true, saying he's going to break the backbone of the civilian population. You know, of course, we had the Minister of Defense saying it's a complete siege, no electricity, no food, no fuel, no water, everything is closed. We are fighting human animals. So all of these statements that we had from all of these top Israeli ministers and officials, this was like October of 2023 or November of 2023 when this ICJ genocide case was filed by South Africa. So again, none of this is new. They laid out their intentions from the beginning, and then they followed through and did exactly what they said they were going to do. And now we're in the final stages of this genocidal onslaught, and it seems like some people may be trying to sort of, you know, repair a little bit of their reputation as things are getting more and more bleak as the days go on, and we have dozens of people at this point starving to death. There is imminent mass famine that's on the horizon, and now the Israeli government is openly stating their genocidal ambitions without pretending to play the game. Now, here we move on to Mehdi Hasan getting into it with John Major over here on the current state of things. So let's just go ahead and watch a little bit of this and work our way through, because this is what it looks like in terms of the current state of the defense of Israel, even this far in.
You say that Israel is not intentionally killing innocent people, but it knows it is killing a lot of innocent people. So its argument is we're going after Hamas, they're embedded in civilian populations, but they are killing a lot of innocent civilians every single day. And not just killing them, they're now starving them, which will also lead to deaths, which is a deliberate, willful act of trying to kill people. Would you accept that?
The war crime.
No, not at all. No. I mean,
starving people?
You can have your own opinions based on your assessment. Yeah, absolutely not starving people. So you're talking about the last 2 months of trucks not going in because Hamas was diverting it. Although the 42 days prior to that, 25,000 trucks went into Gaza. There is absolutely people hungry in Gaza. But Israel is not intentionally starving civilians. Is it trying to starve Hamas combatants in this war that was started on October 7th? No. The evidence doesn't show that. This is the damn lies of statistics and using certain organizations that are using trusted agents. Here's a good For instance, recently, Mehdi.
Okay, so he says Israel is not starving the population of Gaza. It's Hamas that's diverting the aid, even though Israel hasn't been allowing any aid in. That's sort of his logic, I guess, there. And he says that it's lies, it's damn lies, it's statistics. And let's just go ahead and remind ourselves of what we're actually talking about here and what Israel has been up to. So we just recently had this from the Associated Press. Israel says that it will allow basic aid into Gaza after nearly 3 months of blockade. So for now, nearly 3 months, Israel completely cut off the food, the fuel, the water, everything from getting into Gaza, the medicine, everything. They cut it off in a complete siege with the intentional goal of starving out the population of Gaza. How do I know that that's the intentional goal and using starvation as a weapon of war against an entire civilian population? Well, because again, here we have top Israeli officials telling on themselves. This is back from August of last year. Israeli minister says it may be moral to starve 2 million Gazans, but no one in the world would let us. He thinks, this is the top Israeli finance minister, he thinks that it is moral to starve 2 million Palestinians to death. Obviously, vast majority non-combatants and civilians. We also have, here from Amnesty International, Israel, this is back from February of last year, Israel defying an International Court of Justice ruling to prevent genocide by failing to allow adequate humanitarian aid to reach Gaza. So both of the things I'm showing you here are before we even got to the most recent total blockade that Israel implemented over the last 3 months. Amnesty International said this back in February of 2024, 1 month after the ICJ ordered immediate and effective measures to protect Palestinians in the occupied Gaza Strip from the risk of genocide by ensuring sufficient humanitarian assistance and enabling basic services, Israel has failed to take even the bare minimum steps to comply. The bare minimum steps to comply. So they have been restricting humanitarian aid from getting to the civilian population of Gaza throughout the entirety of this genocide. It's just over the last couple of months that they shut off the tap to zero. Now, what are their intentions in doing that? Well, here we have some statements in terms of this recent trickle of aid that they're allowing in from both Prime Minister Netanyahu as well as Finance Minister Smotrich, where they openly state that the only reason they're allowing even a tiny trickle of aid that's wildly insufficient for what the population needs right now is because they don't want to be sent to The Hague, and they want the US and other Western allies to continue to defend them from accountability. So here we have Netanyahu, who vowed on Monday in a video released by his office, announcing that Israel would begin delivering, quote, minimal humanitarian aid, food and medicine only. Netanyahu claimed that the international pressure, including from pro-Israel Republican senators and the White House, required the appearance of humanitarian intervention. Notice, not humanitarian intervention, but just the appearance of it. He says, our best friends in the world, senators I know as strong supporters of Israel, have warned that they cannot support us if images of mass starvation emerge. They come to me and say, we'll give you all the help we need to win the war, but we can't be receiving pictures of famine. We need to do it in a way that they won't stop us. So again, notice the words he's choosing to use here. We can't have images of mass starvation. Not we can't have mass famine because that would be bad. No, he's saying the mass famine would be good, but we just can't have the images coming out because that would make it so that even some of our staunchest allies might not be able to support us. We also had Smotrich saying something similar. He said this aid scheme would allow our friends in the world to continue to provide us with an international umbrella of protection against the Security Council and the Hague Tribunal, and for us to continue to fight. This is what they're openly saying. To translate this, Bezalel Smotrich is saying, yeah, I would love to starve 2 million people to death, but if we do that and we do it rapidly and we don't give the appearance of allowing some humanitarian aid in, then we are going to be charged with war crimes. That's what he's saying here. He's saying we're allowing in a trickle of aid that's completely insufficient in order to deflect from our war crimes, in order to allow us to justify completing the genocide. That's what they're openly saying. So when this dumb motherfucker here tries to pretend like the issue here is Hamas diverting aid or that Israel's not really blocking it or whatever the case may be, that there's not famine, he's just a shameless propagandist. He is a shameless genocidal liar is what he is. Now, we can continue here.
He put on a British doctor in southern Gaza on his show. Maybe you've had him on, and he's talking about how bad the hospitals are. He's sitting in a European hospital in southern Gaza, where they just killed Mohammed Sinwar, who was in a tunnel underneath the hospital. This double standard about Israel, this double standard about war is problematic, Piers, and here's why, is we're going to validate the practice of taking hostages. We're going to validate the use of your own population as human shields, because that's what Hamas is doing. Now, innocent civilians, of course, innocent civilians have died because Hamas does things like not let them evacuate when they're told to evacuate, like actually holding children in their arms while they shoot at the IDF. And again, we can go, and Mehdi can probably go with Al Jazeera to the Hamas side and look for it ourselves on what you think the Israel is trying to do. I also have
So we'll get to Mehdi's response here in a minute, which was absolutely phenomenal. But he's actually trying to claim that the only reason that civilians have been killed is because what? Because Hamas militants are kidnapping Palestinian babies and are holding them in front of them as they're firing at IDF soldiers. And so, oops, the IDF had absolutely no choice but to shoot through the baby to kill the Hamas militant. I mean, it's just, is this not humiliating to use this kind of a rationale here? First of all, that's not happening. We've seen the images of Palestinian children being slaughtered in Gaza. We've seen doctors testify that children have shown up with single sniper bullets to the head and to the chest. We've seen the relentless bombing that has left barely a single building standing in Gaza, where Israel will level entire apartment blocks under the justification that there's a single Hamas militant there that they don't even bother to provide evidence for. We have seen them relentlessly slaughter innocent civilians over and over and over again, not because a Hamas militant was standing behind them, but because their goal is to kill the population of Gaza. The idea that you could possibly look at the images coming out and to come to this conclusion that, oh, it's all the civilian deaths are just incidental. Really? You ended up with killing a majority women and children, and that was incidental? That was a targeted war against Hamas? You ended up bombing hospitals and schools and tent encampments and refugee camps and aid workers and journalists repeatedly for 19 months straight? And all of that was to go after Hamas. Really? That's what we're supposed to believe. Now, in terms of the using hostages as human shields, I mean, I don't know what story or what evidence he has for a Hamas militant holding a baby in front of them while firing something at the IDF, but we do have extensive reporting like this here from the New York Times. How Israel's army uses Palestinians as human shields in Gaza. Israeli soldiers and Palestinian former detainees say that troops regularly forced captured Gazans to carry out life-threatening tasks, including inside Hamas tunnels. So we do know for an absolute fact that if anybody's using hostages or if anybody's using civilians as human shields, that would be Israel. Now, we also had one specific example that I remember from a while ago here, the headline from the BBC: Israeli army strapped wounded Palestinian to the front hood of a military vehicle while they were carrying out a raid in the West Bank. Now, I want you guys to notice something, and that is the date here on this article, June 22nd, 2024. And this is in the West Bank, mind you. Okay, so this has been going on for a very long time. In fact, it's been going on since even before October 7th of 2023. This is nothing new, the practice of using Palestinians as human shields. So, not surprising that he's speaking like this, but, this is sort of the standard, it seems like, for Israel defenders, that every accusation is a confession. Now, with that being said, let's go ahead and continue.
Well, what did you want Israel to do on October 7th? And had the world not stopped and done things like don't go to Rafah, where the hostages are, where Yahya Sinwar is,
all right,
this war would be over by now.
Okay, I'll bring Mehdi to respond. I mean, the one thing I would say is Israel's ongoing refusal to allow international journalists to operate freely in Gaza is a suppression of us uncovering the reality. You say come into Gaza.
That's
actually
not true. Fox News.
No. Israel
Trey Yanks,
Israel has
CNN.
barred almost every international journalist from getting anywhere near it. You know that, and I know that, and it's
I'll be there for my sixth time.
It's
it's
unprecedented for international journalists to be banned in this way from a war zone. It's unprecedented, and it does beg the question, John, why? Now, Mehdi, your response to what John has said there.
All right,
everybody knows.
Here.
I mean, I don't know how I can respond. So much gaslighting from the very beginning. John has been on the ground in Gaza. Yeah, as an embed. I love it when John and Douglas Murray and these people say, oh, we've been on the ground in Gaza. Yeah, as guests of the Israeli military that's doing the killing, starving and maiming. And you've come back and done exactly what they wanted to do. You've done their propaganda for them. Journalists have not been allowed freely into Gaza. That's why every major media organization on planet Earth has said to the Israeli government, you must allow journalists in. The Palestinian journalists who are there have been killed in record numbers. Of course, Piers, you're right. They want to hide what they're doing. That's why they're killing the journalists there and blocking the journalists from coming in. This idea that he's been on the ground. Yeah, I did interview to a doctor, a British plastic surgeon, Dr. Tom Patoka. And by the way, he wasn't in the European hospital because the hospital got bombed by Israel. So he was in another hospital, and he talked to me about how he has to treat patients who have maggots in their wounds. He has to treat patients without limbs. He has to treat children. I've interviewed multiple doctors on the ground in Gaza, actually in Gaza, not hanging around with Israeli military. And they've all said the same thing. American doctors, British doctors, Canadian doctors. They've all talked about how many kids they saw with sniper bullets to the head and chest. Israel does intentionally kill civilians. That's why Benjamin Netanyahu and Yoav Gallant were indicted at the International Criminal Court for precisely those charges, for willful killing of Palestinians, for murder and persecution. That's why they've been indicted. That's why every human rights group in the world says war crimes are being committed. They've killed people holding white flags. We've seen it with our own eyes. They've bombed buildings without warning with families inside, like the Al Dos family that I often cite in October 2023. They've dropped 2,000-pound bombs on refugee camps full of hundreds of people. They have killed 7 aid workers in a clearly marked World Central Kitchen aid convoy. They've bombed World Food Programme convoys, leading to Cindy McCain, the wife of the most pro-Israeli senator of my lifetime, to come out and condemn Israel for attacking aid workers. John wants you to ignore Cindy McCain and British and American doctors and human rights groups and your own lying eyes watching people with white flags being gunned down. He wants you to believe him and his Israeli military minders.
Okay, Mehdi, before we go back to John to respond to that, the question that he raised, and I think I've asked you this before, but I'm still curious about, given the way this is all played.
All right. So flawless takedown there, I guess, from Mehdi. At this point, again, it's almost humiliating watching people defend Israel. It seems like the only thing that they have left in the tank is either to smear people as anti-Semites or to smear them as being in the pocket of Hamas or Qatar or something, or I guess to just tell you to not believe your lying eyes, as Mehdi said there, right? Because you would have to have not seen anything that's coming out of Gaza in order to maintain the position that what Israel is doing is in any way, shape, or form self-defense. Again, is it self-defense when you bomb a clearly marked aid convoy of World Central Kitchen workers or World Food Program workers, or like we just saw a few weeks ago, ambulance and fire truck workers in Gaza who were executed, 15 of them, in cold blood, and then they tried to bury the bodies and destroy the vehicles to cover up the evidence and then lied about it to the world? Like, there's no excusing this. There's no even plausible argument that you could make that they were going after Hamas. And when you see this day after day, week after week, month after month, it becomes basically impossible to continue to defend the indefensible. And yet you still have demons like this guy who somehow are trying to make a living out of doing it, I guess. So I'll leave you guys off with that. In terms of Piers' question towards the beginning of this, what's going to happen? Well, if you listen to Israel or you listen to the Trump administration, what's going to happen is the Trump plan. We just had Netanyahu a couple days ago come out and he said the condition for ending the war, in his view, is following through on the Trump plan, which, as a reminder, is the full mass ethnic cleansing of Palestinians from the Gaza Strip. That's part of the plan for the aid distribution that they're engaging in right now, is they want to try to essentially use the starvation as a weapon and use the food that they're bringing in as bait to consolidate people into certain areas, to slowly push them further and further south towards Rafah, and then eventually to either starve them out or kill them or expel them into surrounding countries. That's the Trump plan. That's their plan. And then to conquer it and potentially, I guess, resettle it or settle it for, the Americans or the Israelis. That's the plan. And they're not even hiding it at this point.
Politic guy has the best politics. Believe me, no one does it like him. Believe me, everyone is saying